Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting for the month of October. We'll have the roll call by Ms. Ragsdale.
Mr. Webb?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Waters?
Here.
Ms. Meese? Here. Mr. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Oakes?
Here.
Ms. Henderson?
Present.
Mr. Harker?
Okay, we'll observe a moment of silence followed by a Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, would please stand. Okay, we'll open our meeting tonight with the hearing of the citizens. I'd like to mention that each person addressing the board under the hearing of the citizens shall be a resident or a landowner of the county or the resident or the registered agent of such reservoir landowner. Each person shall step up, give his name or her name in the district in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless further time is granted by the chairman, shall limit his or her comments to 3 minutes. No person shall be permitted to address the board more than once during the hearing of the citizens, and all remarks shall be addressed to the board as a body and not to any individual member thereof. Hearing of the citizens shall last for a maximum of 45 minutes, and any individual that is signed up to speak shall during that said section, any individual that is signed up to speak during said section who does not get the opportunity to do so because of the aforementioned time limit shall be given speaking opportunity or priority at the next board meeting. Absent the chairman's approval, no person shall be able to speak who is not signed up. Okay, the floor is now open for the approval of the agenda.
We did not have anyone signed up.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Chairwoman, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Thank you. Would there be a second?
A second.
A second by Ms. Meese. All right. There's a motion on the floor now. If we could please vote.
Mr. Waters.
Yes.
Mr. Brown. Yes.
Okay. We have passed 6 voting and 1 absent. Okay. The floor is now open for approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the minutes be approved.
All
I'll
right.
second.
Thank you. It has been approved and seconded. All right. Members may vote. Okay, and the motion carries 6 and 1 absent. All right, for the chairman's report, I do not have a report, but I would like to make a brief comment. If we, as a community, could please remember those who've been affected by the recent storms, not just in the southern states, but also here in our neighborhood. Our prayers and thoughts go out to those affected in the Dry Fork community. All right, and we now have our public hearing. Pursuant to Article 5, Division 7 of the Pennsylvania County Zoning Ordinance, we, the Planning Commission, have been empowered to hear and decide specific applications in support of said ordinance and to make recommendations to the board or the Board of Zoning Appeals. In accomplishing this task, we are charged with promoting the health, the safety, and the general welfare of the citizens of Pennsylvania County. We must ensure that all our decisions and recommendations be directed to these goals, and that each be consistent with the environment, the comprehensive plan, and in the best interest of Pennsylvania County, its citizens, and its posterity. Anyone here to speak to the board regarding zoning cases will be limited to 3 minutes. Ms. Ragsdale.
So our first case is the public hearing for the adoption of the proposed Pennsylvania County zoning ordinance, which is Pennsylvania County Code Chapter 35. The Berkeley Group is here to represent that case.
Good evening, Chair,
Good evening.
members of the Commission. My name is Rebecca Cobb. I'm with the Berkeley Group. Most of you should be familiar with my face, although you're probably more used to seeing Caroline Vanterve up here presenting with you and discussing materials with you. She couldn't make it tonight, so I'm standing in her place. And we will review tonight where this project has been, the progress that we have made, and how we have gotten here today. We will review the project goals and talk about how the proposed ordinance speaks to those goals and answers those goals. We will also look at the proposed structure of the ordinance, talk about next steps, and then allow you time for public hearing and anyone who has signed up to speak. So as I mentioned, we started this about 2.5 years ago. That began with a lot of community input. We had a community survey, we held stakeholder interviews, and held a public workshop. After receiving that public input, we took that information and began drafting the ordinance, and we held joint work sessions with yourselves, the Board of Supervisors, and the BZA, presenting the material that was drafted, reviewing it, editing it based on your comments and your direction. And then after we made it through the entire ordinance, we went back to the public and held a public open house. At that time, we took that information, came back to you all again for another joint meeting where we discussed that public input. We made revisions based on that input and based on your direction. And now we're in this adoption portion. You all will hold your public hearing, and there will also be a public hearing with the Board of Supervisors. So project goals. There are 5 main goals for this ordinance update. We have worked to ensure continued compliance with state code, as some sections are mandatory for your ordinance. Clarify language, reducing the need for interpretation and potential for legal challenge. We've addressed modern zoning issues to incorporate the county's current economic development, housing, and agricultural goals. Last but certainly not least, creating greater compatibility with your comprehensive plan, taking direction found within that comprehensive plan, and then translating it into regulations within your ordinance. So we'll take just a little bit deeper look at these goals and how we are meeting these goals through the proposed draft. The first goal was to bring the county's zoning regulations into full compliance with all applicable state code requirements. This was discussed at length in the diagnostic process that we did at the beginning of this whole process. We took a look at your current ordinance, compared it to state code, and found those gaps or things that were slightly off from what state code requires, and we've ensured that those things have been incorporated fully in this proposed document. You can see a couple of examples there to your right of how we have incorporated references to state code and some state code text and language. And so this brings numerous benefits by ensuring state code compliance, including protecting you in the event of legal challenges, preventing staff from having to make judgment calls that could be arbitrary or inconsistent, and providing greater clarity to property owners and applicants, especially those who may be coming from another state or who are not familiar with zoning codes. So goal 2 was to clarify language and make the ordinance understandable. The current ordinance is lengthy, it's confusing, it's difficult to find what you're looking for and then to understand once you found it, what its meaning is. And so we have sought to restructure and reorganize the ordinance for clarity and simplify whenever possible. This reduces the risk and uncertainty associated with development, meaning applicants know what the county expects and can feel more comfortable proposing development. This also adds transparency and eases the application process for applicants, staff, and yourselves. One of the ways we've sought to achieve this goal is through introducing tables and graphics to help explain complex information, and there are a couple of examples there on your screen. For goal 3, we wanted to ensure the county's use permissions and listed uses in the ordinance were lining up with current trends in the region, as well as the county's economic goals. The list uses in the teal box were not included in the zoning ordinance when we began this process. A few have been included since that time. In the proposed ordinance, all of these uses are identified, defined, and permitted in appropriate districts and contain use standards. This allows new commercial and industrial activity, but also ensures that you are addressing impacts that may occur to the community with these uses. In the case of light manufacturing and heavy manufacturing, the current ordinance does include manufacturing uses. It includes actually about 70 manufacturing uses that are very specific. And so believe it or not, that actually makes your ordinance sort of narrow. It doesn't allow for new developments that aren't on the list. And so as we know, technology is advancing. There's lots of innovation out there. And so what we have done is combined this into 2 uses, a light manufacturing and a heavy manufacturing, and then provided strong definitions that let you know, okay, what types of things fall within those uses. Also, for goal 3, we have improved overall quality of life. And while it may seem contradictory to say that new regulations can improve citizens' lives, that's exactly what the proposed ordinance does. One of the main goals in zoning is to prevent negative impacts on the community's health, safety, and welfare, the very things that you mentioned you all are charged with protecting. Another main goal of zoning is to protect rural and agricultural lands. And so the ordinance provides a new article on community design standards, which will help improve the compatibility of different adjoining uses. The figure on your screen demonstrates one of these regulations. It shows an heavy industrial property with trees around it. And so in the ordinance, there is a requirement that when you are heavy industrial, you must plant trees and screening when you are adjacent to agricultural, residential, or commercial properties. Community design standards also help limit impacts from trash, junk, odor, and loud noise. Another example on the screen is text related to fencing. It ensures that fencing is made out of nice materials. It's not made out of junk and unsightly items. The ordinance also provides property owners to be creative and flexible with applications. And so some examples on the screen for that are that with zoning map amendments, the ordinance will require a concept plan, and the concept plan is just a bit more flexible. It allows the applicant to provide you all with an idea of this is generally where the building will sit, this is generally the uses and the layout. And then after that, they would submit a site plan. So they get to have some feedback from you all and some approval first, and then they would be required to be more specific and submit that site plan. The other item, which I realize is pretty small on your screen, is text below one of the tables for industrial standards. In the industrial districts, there are height limitations. However, depending on the type of use, they may need additional ceiling height, additional stories of a building. And so this is some flexibility here that allows structures within your industrial park to have greater height, or if it's not in the industrial park, they can have additional setbacks and then increase their height. So being flexible, but being specific with the flexibility. Next, we have sought to draft and structure the zoning ordinance in a way that is user-friendly, ease for county staff to interpret and enforce, and easy for the community and applicants to understand and find what they need. This improves communication by setting clear expectations, reducing the amount of time and money county staff spends on making determinations and enforcing the code. The example on your screen shows one of the tables in the residential districts and lets those know exactly what are the setback requirements, what are the lot requirements. So there's less questioning that they have to do with staff. The next example is figures of signs and shows how to measure a sign. Again, helping the individual know the information without seeking staff input. The fifth and final goal of this update process was to incorporate policy guidance established in the county's comprehensive plan into zoning ordinance regulations. When harmony between your comp plan and your zoning regulations is achieved, you will see progress towards your envisioned future for the county and the community. One goal in your comp plan was to diversify industrial and commercial businesses, but also protect residential and agricultural lands. To work towards this goal, we have included new industrial and commercial uses, but also included use standards and design standards that protect neighbors from potential impacts. Another goal in the plan is to enhance the character of the county through preservation. Therefore, we included requirements to clearly note special areas on development plans and to consider open space for large developments. And I should say dedicating specific open space. Support of telecommunications is another goal in the comprehensive plan. The proposed ordinance includes modern telecommunication uses, review procedures, and use standards. The final goal I'll mention tonight, there's certainly more in your comprehensive plan and more that relate to the zoning ordinance, but the final one I'll mention tonight says that the ordinance should be amended to enhance standards for signs, lighting, landscaping. As I mentioned earlier, we have included a new article that addresses these aspects of the community. So then looking at your ordinance structure, it is quite different from your current ordinance. There are 10 articles. Those articles are divided into divisions, and then the divisions are divided into sections. The first portions of the ordinance are related heavily to sort of administration. Then you get into district standards, then uses, community design, then nonconformities, and Article 10 is definitions, and I'll go through these in just a little bit more detail for anyone who's not aware of what those things mean. So Article 1 provides the purpose, authority, and effective date of the ordinance. Article 2 establishes your powers and duties. For all those who work with the ordinance the most, that means the zoning administrator, you all as the planning commission, also the Board of Zoning Appeals, and it identifies procedures for all of you. Article 3 provides procedures and standards for permits and applications. So anyone who's wanting to submit an application, this is a good place to start to find out exactly what is required to be provided, what that process will look like, and timeframes and so on. Here I mention Article 9, nonconformities, and that's because this is also very heavily sort of administrative and tied to state code. And I'll go into a little bit more information about that in another slide. Article 10 is definitions. We've made sure we have defined every use within the ordinance, and then also defined some additional terms just to help with interpretation and understanding the ordinance. The next article, Article 4, is starting the district standards and the regulations related to districts. So this is your primary zoning districts, and it's going to be broken out by agricultural, residential, commercial, industrial zones, and it contains information like lot size, setbacks, building height, those types of things. Article 5 establishes the standards for the 3 overlay districts, which are floodplain, lake surface, and airport. And so just an overlay means that you have the initial primary zoning district, which would be in Article 4, and then on top of that, there may be some additional regulations related to floodplains, lake service, or airport, depending on where the property is located. So then Article 6 begins the uses. It establishes the uses and the permissions. Within this article, there is a matrix that you can see on the screen to the right. That matrix provides each of the zoning districts and then a list of all of the uses. So in one place, you can see exactly where a particular use is allowed in which districts, or you could follow that down through a particular districts and see all of the uses that are allowed by right, by SUP, or maybe are not allowed at all. Also on the right of that column is a reference to use performance standards, so you will know if that particular use has additional standards with it. Those additional standards are located in Article 7. Then Article 8 provides community design standards. Those are those lighting, fencing, open space, signage, parking requirements that we've spoken about. And so back to nonconformities, which is Article 9. Like I said, it is heavily dictated by Code of Virginia, and it allows nonconformities to continue. And so what people may be familiar with is the term grandfathered or grandfathering. And so that's what we are talking about when we say nonconformities. You know, it's important to understand that when you are adopting new regulation, especially a full new ordinance, you may be creating some nonconformities because we have changed some rules. And so it's important for people to know that, you know, their home, just because we've changed setback, does not mean that they need to tear off their porch because they no longer meet setback, or that they need to change something about the use that they are doing. They can continue operating in the way that they are. They can continue holding the land that they are holding. Changes occur, or when they want to make changes is when then they would need to take a look at this code and see, okay, now do I need to come into compliance with the new ordinance? So I just want to be clear about that. I know that there's a lot of questions sometimes is, well, I have this and I see you've, you know, created this new thing that I don't fit within. And so you can continue. It's only when you are doing something new you would comply within the new ordinance. So in terms of steps, you'll see you have checked off many steps over the course of a couple of years. And so now we are at Planning Commission public hearing and recommendation. Planning Commission tonight, you can recommend approval, you can approve with amendments, or you can recommend denial of the proposed zoning ordinance. The Board of Supervisors will be meeting in November to hear your recommendation and to hold a public hearing and then make a final decision related to the ordinance. And so thank you. I am here if you have questions for me related to the proposed ordinance or any questions related to questions or comments from the public.
I've got one thing I'd like to bring up. It's on page 158, Roman numeral 7-47. It has to do with data centers. And it's D, talking about the utilities. From what I understand, data centers take such a massive amount of power that unless a data center has generation capacity on site, I would like to see it limited to where they could only be built where it's a high transmission voltage line. And the reason for this is I've talked to people down in Mecklenburg County, and one of the larger companies has come in. They start off offering 4 or 5 times the amount for real estate, buying up farms, and farmers say that they're just choking the life out of agriculture. And if we restrict it to where they have to be on public water and be next to a high transmission line, or have a transmission line on property that restricts it down to where they can go. And if we do that, it shouldn't affect the property values of the area. And if they have to build transmission lines, you get into eminent domain with the power company running power lines across other people's property, which, they don't want either. And so I would like to make that suggestion.
I'll just say that, yes, discuss that, and then when you make your motion, if that is something that you all would like to do and you want to, recommend approval, you can make it with that consideration to be added as a new item B in 7-6-2.
Is there anybody else that would like to address our guest or those concerns brought up by Mr. Oaks? Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment. This zoning ordinance rewrite was a major project for the county, and all of us, the ZBA, the BZA, and the Board of Supervisors were in numerous work sessions to develop this with the Berkeley group, and I'm not sure the citizens really realize what zoning ordinances are. So I would like to see if Emily maybe would summarize why this was done, exactly what it is for everyone here and the people listening through or watching through social media.
So the county zoning ordinance was originally adopted in 1991. It is an ordinance that was designed around uses and uses specified. So if the use is not a specified use in our zoning ordinance, it is not permitted. It has to come before Planning Commission if it's not specifically stated as a recognized use in our zoning ordinance. So as development has changed since 1991, there are uses that are very prevalent now that were unheard of in 1991, and we were not regulated at that time. So us updating this ordinance is making sure that we are staying current with development trends, not only that we are seeing locally, but that we are seeing on a broader scale, because eventually they will trickle down and we will see them eventually. We want to make sure that we are properly regulating them to protect the citizens from adverse effects that those uses could impose on them that are living in areas that these uses may locate near. And then just development trends in general and best practices, making sure that we're keeping up with parking requirements, lighting requirements. We do not regulate lighting at all currently in our zoning ordinance. So if you are a residential property and you are located next to a commercially zoned property and a commercial business opens up, there's nothing to restrict where their light shines, how bright their lights can be, hours that their lights can be on. So we are just trying to make sure that we are putting proper regulations in place to protect all of our residents, while also promoting development in areas that development should occur in a way that we can sustain and is going to be feasible for the county to maintain in the long term. So that is why we took on this project with the Berkeley group, and then just to make sure that we stay in accordance with state code. State code is constantly changing. We try our best as staff to keep up with changes that are made in the state code and make sure that what is changed in the state code, we make changes to reflect in our zoning ordinance. But over 30 years, it's very possible that things are missed and very likely that things have been missed. So it's good to do this periodically just to make sure that we are fully in compliance. And then just to make sure that the county is protected and staff is protected against appeals and lawsuits for interpretations. Right now, our zoning ordinance is lacking definitions. And so that requires me as the zoning administrator to make interpretations on a regular basis, and that is not something that you want. You want everything to be clearly defined and spelled out in black and white so that the code defines and makes the determination, not staff. So those are things that encourage the county to move forward with this process, and then just to make the document more user-friendly. Staff has a hard time because you have to go back and forth in our current document, and some things are listed in this section and other things are listed in this section, and there are definitions in two different places, and it's not very user-friendly. So if staff has a hard time interpreting it at times, we know that the general public has a hard time interpreting it, so we want to make it easily readable for everyone because it's a document that affects everyone.
Thank you, Emily.
All right. Does anyone else have?
Madam Chair, could I make a comment, please?
Sure.
I want to thank the staff and the Berkeley group for doing this, because, I mean, it's something we needed to do, is update it. But I also want everybody to understand if it's something has to be changed, the Board of Supervisors does have the power to change at any time. Not to say we all, but if it's something that's out of line and it's not working for us, it's not the best thing for the citizens, the board does have the authority to make that change. So we're going to try to do what's best for the citizens. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to close that. Oh,
Well, we did not have anyone signed up to speak, so.
all right. All right then, well, it's 7:32. We're going to close that portion. And the floor is open for a motion to have a motion on the floor to approve what's been presented. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Emily, how does it work with Mr. Oaks's contingency or the add-on? Or
So.
I mean, do we vote this straight like this, or can we add on something like that?
You can. So you can either recommend to approve it as presented. You can recommend to deny it as presented. You can recommend to approve it with changes made. And so Rebecca can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 7-6-2. Is that correct? And you would just make a motion to approve it as presented with the amendment to that section. And she may have written down the exact wording if you need that exact wording, but, or we can go back through but you can just state that to add 7-6-2 to make the changes presented by Mr. Oaks.
I'll make a motion. Do we, I don't have a number on mine as far as, you said 7-6?
-2 is the section that
Seven-
change would be
To add the contingency that Mr. Oaks had, and then I'll make a positive approval to the Board of Supervisors in the Pittsylvania County Zoning Ordinance Code, Chapter 35.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you for the second by Mr. Oaks. Members, you may vote. Okay, and the motion carries 6 approved with 1 absent. All right, 7:35. Ms. Emily, if you'd like to address the next case.
And you open the public hearing? Okay. Case R-24-021, William and Lisa Myers have petitioned to rezone 5 acres located on State Road 733, Barker Road, in the Dane River Election District from R1 Residential Suburban Subdivision District to A1 Agricultural District to allow for a Class B home occupation on the property, a commercial kitchen. Once the property is rezoned to A1, all uses listed under Section 35-178 are permitted. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Bill Myers is here to represent the petition.
Mr. Myers?
Maybe he's not here. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
All right, thank you. Would anyone have any questions?
And we do not have anyone signed up to speak.
All right, we'll close that portion. All right, Ms. Ragsdale. Mr. Brown, looks like this is in your district.
Yes, ma'am, and I haven't got any calls or anything on this case, so in case R-24-021, I recommend for approval.
Mr. Chairwoman, I'll second.
All right, has been motioned and approved. Thank you. And members, if you would please take your vote.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries 6 in the affirmative and 1 absent. All right, next case, Ms. Ragsdale.
Open the public hearing.
Oh.
Case
We're closing that.
R-24-0222, Jack Hudgens Jr. has petitioned to rezone 11.53 acres located on State Road 891 Deercrest Lane in the Tunstall Election District from R1 Residential Suburban Subdivision District to A1 Agricultural District to allow the property to be used for agricultural purposes. Once the property is rezoned to A1, all uses listed under Section 35-178 are permitted. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Jack Hudgens is here to represent the petition.
Okay, Mr. Hudgens, you may step forward.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Do you have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions to address Mr. Hudgens with? Or would you like to speak to this case?
Speak to what, ma'am?
Would you like to speak to this case?
Speak to the case? Yes, it's a property I just purchased, and it has 2 residential parcels. Both are located near where housing is, and then the area that I want to change to A1 is back off the road, and adjacent to it is also A1 property back there. So it's pretty in keeping with what's going on out there on Deercrest. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Would anyone like to ask a question of Ms. Hudgens? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
We do have someone signed up to speak.
All right, you may step forward.
Robin Williams.
Okay, welcome, Ms. Williams.
I would like to.
Can you pull the microphone down? There you go.
Oops, okay. I would like to recommend to this commission that you approve the change from residential to A1 because the location of the property is surrounded by agricultural means, whether just open fields, wooded areas. I happen to be the owner of the property on the road frontage in front of him, and I have horses, and it's more agricultural than it is residential. He appears to be a gentleman that's going to follow all environmental and property policies. So I would strongly recommend this change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who has not signed up that will wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close that public portion.
Madam Chairman, in case R-24-02, I recommend it we change the zoning from R1 to A1.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It has been properly voted in second. Can you please vote? All right, that motion passes 6 with 1 absent. The public hearing is now open. Ms. Raxiel.
Case R-24-023, Ray Atkins Jr. and Randy Atkins have petitioned to rezone 1.57 acres located on State Road 1132, Old Mayfield Road, in the Westover Election District from RC1 Residential Combined Subdivision District to R1 Residential Suburban Subdivision District to allow the property to be consolidated with an adjacent parcel zoned R1. Once the property is rezoned to R1, all uses listed under Section 35-222 are permitted. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Adam Lane is here to represent the petition.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lane. Please step forward.
Yes, Mr. Atkins has two parcels adjoining one another, R1 and...
Can you pull the mic
your
up, sir?
microphone up?
Mr. Atkins has two parcels adjoining one another. One is R1 and one is RC1, and he wishes to have them both R1 to do a lot line adjustment, and this would make all these parcels in conformance with all the adjoining parcels rounded up and down the road are R1. Are there any questions?
Questions here? All right, thank you.
There is no one signed up to speak.
All right.
Ms. Chairwoman, in case R-24-023, make a motion that we approve or make a recommendation to be approved to the Board of Supervisors to rezone this to R1 from RC1.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, we could please vote. All right, the motion carries 6 and 1 absent. All right, next case.
Case S-24-019, East Point Energy has petitioned for a special use permit on 193.04 acres located on State Road 646, Spring Road, in the Stanton River Election District to allow for a public utility, a battery storage facility, in accordance with Pennsylvania County Code Section 35-179. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Chris Myers is here to represent the petition.
Mr. Myers, I presume?
Yeah,
All
and
right, thank you.
good evening, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners. Appreciate this opportunity to present to you. We have a small PowerPoint deck. I first want to acknowledge, I think there's a fair amount of people here that are interested in this topic and are going to be speaking in the public. I don't think I was able to present to you at a community meeting that we held last Friday, and I think Mr. Scruggs was able to attend, but I know for all of you, I think it's going to be the first time maybe you get information about this. My apologies. I'm happy, more than happy to, again, meet with you all just like I did with Mr. Scruggs last Friday. Again, we organized that meeting with a couple of weeks. Apologies again that you didn't get that invite. Next slide, though, please. Oh, I have the power. Excuse me.
Push down.
Oh, wrong one. There we go. Just a brief overview of the agenda here. I'm going to click through here, though, pretty quick. East Point Energy, we're based up in Charlottesville, Virginia, so just 2 hours, basically up 29. We only focus on standalone battery storage projects. So what I'm presenting you today and what we do is only battery energy storage. We're not solar. We're not doing solar in Pennsylvania County. We're not doing solar anywhere else in the United States at the moment. So I just want to be very clear about that. We developed some of the first projects here in actually Virginia. The first commission project up with Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, and the most recent one that was commissioned, the largest in the state, Dry Bridge Energy Center, which was purchased, is now operated by Dominion Energy Center up in Chesterfield County. I just want to make clear, I think you all approved a project here a couple months ago, or at least one, in your industrial center with Strata Clean Energy. More and more of these are coming on as to kind of match the increasing demand that the data centers are generating, et cetera, across the state, in addition to state level policy and the desire to have a kind of reliable electrical grid. But again, we are based here in Virginia, doing a lot of projects here in Virginia. This is just for you all to make sure that this is not the first one we've done, nor is it the first being the guinea pigs. We've worked with, over the years, and the founders, a lot of different folks here. You'll see Dominion. They've had faith in the quality of our projects, purchased our projects, are operating them. A lot of other big utility companies throughout the United States. What is grid energy storage here, though? So this is a rendering, and to be very clear, this is not a rendering of Simpson Energy Center that you will see later on, but is a kind of a general rendering. What you'll see here is basically kind of what look like white shipping containers. We call those battery enclosures. Those are specifically designed to hold the batteries, and then the battery management systems that basically turn the batteries on, charge and discharge them. You can see it kind of looks like a substation to a certain extent. There's other transformers, inverters, other electrical equipment that help the battery system connect to the electrical grid. So these are always going to be usually adjacent to a transmission line, in the case of Simpson Energy Center, or adjacent to a transmission line or an electrical substation. In this case, we're showing one next to an electrical substation, which I think what you also might notice here is there's security fencing, there's screening along that fence. You're not going to see trees up against it necessarily, because we can't have trees falling on the project, but then you'll have trees a little ways away in order to further screen this. We want these things not to be seen, heard, messed with, etc. And that's the whole goal, and we want them to operate silently in the background. There's no cars coming into this every day or anything like that. They're basically remotely monitored. The technology that goes in these are the same technology, the batteries that you have basically that power your laptops or your cell phones that you have next to you, or your iPads, etc. It's a lithium-ion chemistry, very typical. Again, a lot of us sleep with it right next to us every day, every night. Just a lot of these, they basically packed into these enclosures. Again, there's lots of systems in place to make sure that keep them running, charging, discharging, monitor them, and if there's a problem, shut them down. Next slide. Finally here, you see is you're not seeing a smokestack. We're not burning a fossil fuel on the site or anything like that to generate the electricity that goes in the batteries. Again, these are basically connecting the electricity grid and charging and discharging from it. All right? And there's no liquid chemicals, there's no chlorine, there's nothing like that that we keep on site or anything like that either that are used to operate this. I heard a concern earlier about transmission lines, et cetera, especially with more data centers coming in. These are part of the solutions for that. By basically having more electricity power near the demand by the grid, you can reduce the need for additional transmission lines or other electrical infrastructure like substations. If you're going to have a lot of data centers in Pennsylvania County, you're going to need more battery energy storage, okay? And to your concern about, again, These do not make more transmission lines. These, again, connect to the existing transmission lines and basically make them work better. These will support basically the larger utility grid being more reliable. It's not going to protect you from Hurricane Helene having a tree fall on your wire and knock the power out to your house. However, you might remember like 2 years ago there was Winter Storm Elliott when we got extremely low cold temperatures right before Christmas. North Carolina had rolling blackouts. That's because their natural gas plants basically that generated power lost fuel because they diverted the fuel for people's home. Battery projects like this on electricity grid ensure that electricity stays on. Okay, and you need not just this one, but multiple of them, but this is part of the solution for that. Finally, and I'll go over a little bit later too, it does make a contribution to your local economy, specifically more your local tax base, while not requiring any services. These do not send kids to school. They do not need other services provided by the county. There is a lot of concern, and rightfully so, around the storage safety. These are not, to be very clear, they're not the same type of batteries that go into your e-scooters or your e-bikes that you hear about catching on fire. Very different technology. Our batteries have to go through a check at the factory. There's special codes, what they call UL codes, that are required, and I think you have your new ordinance also, and that we'd be following. They get checked at the factory. They then get loaded into these enclosures, which are specially built, designed for these, have special systems in place to monitor them all. You hear these codes here, NFPA 855, that's National Fire Protective Agencies. That's a bunch of fire professionals who basically have designed specific rules on how to design things, all the codes for how the batteries need to follow, etc., the spacing, how you would create an emergency response plan, decommissioning plans. All those things have been thought through and basically get updated every 3 or 4 years. And that's what we expect to follow and what is, I think, in our conditions also. We've already started talking to the fire department. We started talking to the fire department 8 months ago. I had a meeting with them 3 weeks ago. And that was just the first amount of meetings that we would have. And if this project moves forward, we would have multiple more to make sure they're ready to respond if an emergency were to happen. And finally, I talked about, this is kind of, again, these batteries are we use in every day. Again, you're using them right now with your laptops, your iPads, the phones in our pockets. Getting to specifically Simpson Energy Center, this is, the size of it is what we call a 60 megawatt project. And what that means is that it can basically supply electricity to about 20,000 homes over 4 hours. Okay? I think that's more homes than there are in Pennsylvania County. Siding agreement, we have negotiated one with the Board of Supervisors. That's going to be reviewed by them in the middle of the month. But in it, we have more than $900,000 of payments before we go operational. Some of that is for East Point specifically advocated for and made sure there was included our payments for emergency services and any equipment they might need to respond. Okay? Additionally, there would be revenue share payments similar to what your solar systems have after operations. That would be the equivalent of over $2.2 million over 20 years. So I think there are significant benefits here to the county, again, while basically having very minimal use of services or costs associated by the county having to deal with it. In addition to if the county planning department, again, during the review and design of this, the site plan application, verifying codes, ordinances, stormwater, there's money built into that siding agreement to pay for all that too, to make sure the county comes out ahead. This is a rendering of the project. If you're looking east, I'm going to go back one more slide here. Kind of, this is the location on the property, on the parcel. Generally, again, north is looking to the top. I'm going to go back to that rendering though. So now we're looking east. Spring Road would be in your left top corner, in which there are some residential homes along that road that we're at least 350 feet away from. There's a driveway that comes along that we would use to access, and we'll see that more from Spring Road, but it comes across the property line basically to the north. We would access off of that and have a vegetation screening there to ensure that all those neighbors aren't seeing this project again. That's the goal. You have all those enclosures. What you're not seeing at the bottom is a transmission line. That's what we connect to. Sorry, the rendering guys forgot to add that, and we will add that soon. But then you have basically our substation and switching station that connects the project to the transmission lines there. So there's nothing here that is going to be popping up. This is not a cell tower. No one's going to be seeing this from your public roads. Only basically if you're driving onto the parcel on the private driveway and when you'd be driving past the project would you see it. Okay. Again, this is general area. We're about 5 miles off of 29 and northeast of Gretna in the Staunton River District for a bit of a geography. And then again, I kind of went over, this is just looking down directly, overview. You'll see, again, Spring Road coming from kind of the top center going down the bottom right. The property parcel is 197 acres. We're not using 197 acres. We're only proposing to use 16 up to 20. Okay? And we're not planning on building solar on the rest of it or anything like that. That's the only location we're planning on doing, and as we understand it, our special use permit only allows us to build right there. So I mentioned community outreach, and again, my apologies to the folks who are seeing this for the first time. We sent neighbors in February, letters to neighbors in February when we started the application process and started our due diligence on getting our SUP, et cetera. I did get a call back from a landowner at that time, so I know folks did receive it. But again, all the neighbors that are directly adjacent to it on the project on Spring Road got letters. We met with the fire department again. I mentioned that the chief fire marshal for the county discussed any concerns they might had. They didn't have any at that time. Again, we were trying to basically get feedback and to design the project that would take anybody's concerns into consideration. I met with the fire department again 3 weeks ago. Similarly, they did not have any new concerns for us. I don't think they expressed any concerns to Emily, or did you see anything in your package here about the safety of the project? And again, we plan on, in our process, continuing to work with them to make sure they're trained up, especially the volunteer fire department, that would have to respond if there was an emergency. I sent more letters, again, a couple of weeks ago as part of our due diligence for this process. I knocked on some doors until the dog chased me away from a couple of them. And then we did end up having a community meeting, again, like I said, with Mr. Scruggs, that's here in attendance, and some other neighbors last Friday. That was an open invitation. Try to make sure as many people can make it as possible. We're open to talk to as many people who want to talk to us about it. And then we also created a website for public information. So I hope you see here that we've gone beyond the minimum. That's always how we do our development. Always happy to talk to anybody that's concerned, whether they're a neighbor or someone else. I did reach out to planning commissioners and supervisors also, trying to get through your phone numbers and your that are listed on emails that are listed on the website. Finally, there is 2.5 pages of conditions which follow the battery energy storage ordinance. Additions that you guys just made are recommended being approved that have a lot to do with safety, how to do these things. We're fine with all of these. We designed our project to meet all of them or exceed them. We were just requesting 2 potential modifications. I mean, one, we'd like to tighten up some of the language around us being required to provide water on the site. We'd probably likely do that through a standing tank, but want to make sure that meets that, again, National Fire Protection Agency 855 guidance. So whatever the fire experts say, we want to meet. And then basically with how these things are, the process we have to go through, not only to get a discretionary permit from you all in Pennsylvania County to be able to build this, but also we have to do something, basically it takes 4 years with the utility company to study the project. They have to come back and tell us when we can charge, how we can charge the batteries, what type of equipment we have to add, how big their substation needs to be. That all takes, unfortunately, at least 3 years to do. And so there's a condition in here that is requiring us to basically start construction within 3 years or have to come back to you all again. And it, unfortunately, it's just not feasible based on how kind of the parallel process we have to start basically with the utility company to study the project before we know we can basically decide to go forward with the project or not. All right, so we would like to change that to basically start it within the site plan application process within 4 years. So that is it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions to ask of the gentleman?
What's your safety record with the other facilities in the state?
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat that?
What is your safety record with the other facilities you have?
So none of our projects have had any safety issues. We've developed a lot of them. We have projects that are now in construction down in Texas, but none of the projects we've built have had any safety issues developed.
All right.
And no projects in Virginia have had any emergency issues. It's more in California, up in Connecticut that have had issues.
All right. With their local first responders with fire, are they going to need any additional equipment or supplies to deal with lithium fires?
Yeah. So lithium-ion fires, if you've seen this, and a lot of people have seen this on the news, you can't put them out necessarily with water. You could toss a lithium-ion battery in a bathtub full of water and it would not go out. It would still, because the fuel's coming from basically the electrolytes inside the fuel cell. So the guidance is basically to protect all the neighboring kind of buildings or structures or vegetation from something spreading and basically maintain it. These enclosures are designed basically to maintain and contain any fire if it were to happen within it. It basically kind of turns into a barbecue, for lack of a better term. Okay, so a volunteer fire department that would respond, basically their responsibility, what they'd be trained up to do, is not to try to basically hose down the enclosure and put a bunch of water on it and put it out, but rather to, again, maintain it, protect it. We would have staff that would respond within 2 or 3 hours, basically, to also assist them and basically manage the situation until it went out. There was a lot of things that would happen before that, the mitigating things that, again, to reduce that it gets to that, and we have systems in place that would basically, if it starts to even hint at a gas coming out that would signal that it's starting to have a fire, there's suppression systems that would go into place in addition to shutting down the battery and discharging the battery. All that in order to, again, reduce the amount of energy in the batteries and potentially the length of a fire or emergency that volunteers would have to respond to.
Okay.
So I would just suggest maybe they might want another tanker truck. But again, we're specifically asking that we add additional water there and make sure that water is available so that they can, again, basically protect the neighboring structures. Even if one enclosure goes online, they're again, you might have seen here, they're spaced out. And again, they have fire protection on the outsides and inside so that one doesn't catch you. You don't basically have a domino effect of a big conflagration happening. And I think if you look back and you study any of the recent incidents, that's where you'll see what's happened, is basically it's very much contained to one enclosure. Did that answer your question, sir?
I think so.
Okay.
I have a question. Oh, did I understand you say you will have staff to monitor and make sure? Do you have anybody hired to sort of manage that?
Correct. These are all basically managed from what we call a remote operations center that look at them 24/7 or getting constant feedback on what they're doing, because we're not only telling the batteries when to charge and discharge, but also, again, monitoring all these systems. So there's basically somebody constantly, in addition to a lot of machines, basically multiple levels of checks, ensuring that everything's going properly.
Right.
What was significant with this location, or how, I guess my point is, if it's not related to the, and I'm learning about this as we're talking, but if this solar farm, which is not there, isn't bringing power, how does it get power to the batteries?
Yeah, so this is where we connect to that transmission line that's got power going, just like you're connecting to like a water line, sir.
Okay.
And basically, we open the tap and tap that transmission line, usually late at night.
So it's coming off an actual grid, not off one of the solar farms in the area?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Some solar farms will be hybrid and they will have these types of systems on there, and then they would be filling their batteries up so they could sell the power at a later time of day when it's worth more. We basically kind of, to some extent, how we make money is basically filling up the batteries with cheap power at night when there's not a lot of demand for power, if that makes sense, and then deploying it later in the day. Let's say, think about August, 5 p.m. on a hot day, everybody's turning on their air conditioners, and then that electricity is 10x what we basically paid for it and when we charged up the batteries at night.
Right.
But again, from the transmission grid. So this is not connecting to your local distribution. We do have a connection to the distribution grid, to basically run our systems, like the HVAC system and the battery management system. We also have a backup power system also, if that makes sense. But that's all to like run all the auxiliary equipment, not charge up the batteries. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone present who wants to speak?
Thank you.
We have,
Thank you.
we have quite a few.
All right, thank you.
Keith Scruggs.
So, good evening, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Keith Scruggs. I live in at 112 Knollwood Drive, Gretna, Virginia, actually in the Callens-Gretna district. I own property just over 200 acres that is adjacent to this property being considered for the special use permit, with planted timber carrying a value in hundreds of thousands of dollars. A battery storage facility carries the risk of fire, explosions, and other environmental impacts, primarily caused by thermal runaway within the lithium batteries. A fire, especially during a drought like we had in June or July, would be catastrophic if it got involved in the timber that's adjacent to this property that's being considered. A sprinkler system, 24-hour monitoring system, perimeter fencing, vegetation controls, or setback requirements are not going to stop a potential fire or potentially hazardous plumes of smoke. Lithium batteries are notorious for being very difficult to extinguish. If, like solar farms, local EMS will be told to just let it burn, all the while pouring plumes of smoke, toxic fumes potentially, and sparks will be in the air. As noted on a website under frequently asked questions, East Point says that they selected this site based on only 3 considerations: proximity to a transmission line, degraded soil, and minimal visibility by local residents or from the road. In addition to my concerns about fire to my property, I'm concerned for some residents in a community of about 25 homes in Sky Blue Acres. That home development is less than 0.8 of a mile away from where the site will be located. Most, if not all of them, have not been informed about the potential hazards coming near their homes for this proposed project because their property was not adjacent to the site. A small sign posted at the entrance to the site and a notice in a newspaper for 2 weeks doesn't serve as good communication. Yet, in the event of a catastrophic failure, they could be told to shelter in place or even evacuate. I urge you to reject this special use permit for this 193.04 acres totally, or at least not recommend approval until the citizens in that community are adequately informed of the intent and potential hazards that they could be faced with in the future. I ask you, please don't allow revenue sources to supersede the concerns of the well-being and health of our local citizens. Thank you.
Andy Oakes.
Hello, my name is Andy Oakes. I live, maybe 5 blocks down from the proposed site. We were not contacted with any information to know anything. I just found about it last night. But our concern is with, like, if it was to catch fire, the environmental issues that would come from it. What's going to be toxic in the air, the waterways, and then if it does catch on fire, it has to burn. Well, the people that live right in front of it, you know, it's burning. How big of a fire does one unit create? No, I mean, we haven't been informed. Will the department be able to get there in time to save those houses? That's basically the issue. I mean, the safety, the environmental issues that it's going to create. And, you know, and it's 193 acres. He said he's only going to propose to use 16. But is this zone going to restrict that? I mean, if he gets off the zoning to do 193 acres, he could come back in a year and put up more. So that's going to create that much more of a environmental issue if something does go wrong. That's just our concern. Basically, like I said, with the environment and the people adjoining. And there is waterways close to it, farmland. That's pretty much just all I want to say. But really consider it hard before you agree to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the next two are meant to sign up on the next case, but I'll call them and they can correct me if I'm wrong. Ann Smith. Okay. And Linda Brooks. Did you want to speak on the data center? Okay. James, and I can't quite make out your last name. I know it starts with a C. Okay. Oh, that's Cedar Road too. Terry Bays.
Good evening. My name is Terry Bays. I live at 5716 Blue Ridge Drive, Hurt, Virginia. I don't think that this here proposal needs to be passed. Within a half a mile of this site, there is subdivision called Sky Blue Acres. 50% of the people living in that subdivision are 75 years plus. Most of them are ladies, the husbands have passed, and my research on this units that he's talking about putting up, they're not as dangerous as a lot of things, but they are dangerous. If they catch on fire, it's near about impossible to put them out. Gretna, Alabaster does not have the knowledge to put them out as of now. They don't have the equipment to put them out as of now. The ladies and stuff in this, what I can understand, if it catches on fire, it puts off toxic gases and smoke. And it's very flammable. If it's enough gets in the air, you can have a fireball. And these ladies and stuff, if it catches on fire at night, this wind blowing in the right direction, it will fill this subdivision completely full of toxic gas and smoke. And when you're 80 years old, and it's probably a third of the ladies and men living in that area are plus 80 years old, their lungs can't handle but so much. And I think it needs to be looked into a whole lot more before it is passed. I thank y'all for listening to me, and I hope it will be looked into.
Thank you, sir.
And I believe the next one is Fred Curl.
I'm Fred Curl. I own the land out there. This land is about a half a mile back off of Spring Road. It's It's about as good a property for a solar battery factory as anything. And it's actually 350 acres. I own the farm next to it, but it's on a big tract, but they only just going to take a small part of this land for this. Now, what I've heard about it is, like anything else, a gas station or any place else, you've got to have stuff to protect it if something causes a fire or whatever. But I think it's an ideal location. It's over by itself. It's way back off the road, and it's near. They got to have it near these power lines, I understand. And so I'm all for it, but I don't think there's going to be any problems with it. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know I was all for it. Anything that'll help my light bill, I'm for it.
Justin Brown.
Good evening. I'm Justin Brown. I live in Sky Blue Acres. I was told that there was some letters sent out. I never received anything. I live 0.8 miles away. I have a 13-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and if you look back at the research, May of 2024, one of these battery storage facilities caught fire in California, and they have them all over out there, burnt for 5 days straight. Emissions kept going up in the air, and it cannot be good for you. That's something that you all have to take into account. I know it's not a lot of people in the community, but it is people in our community, and we love all of them. That's something that I don't want to see anything happen to them. Thank you.
That's all that's signed up to speak.
All right, thank you, everyone. At 8:17, that public hearing is now closed.
Mr. Chairman, you may want to bring the applicant back up to let him address any concerns.
Oh, yes. The hearing is reopening, forgive me.
Thank you, and I want to say I think I understand where a lot of these neighbors are coming from. They live there, it's their homes. I would have concern about something new coming in next to my property too, and you look these up on Google and you see something in the news and it's the conflagration and it's scary. Very, I think, legitimate concerns and fears, and I want to acknowledge that. I do also want to note that, again, we met with your fire professionals, not only in February, but in September. We discussed all this technology with them, how would the volunteer fire department respond, etc. They're familiar with this technology. We answered all their questions. And what you're not seeing in your packet here is a concern from your fire experts, the fire marshal's office, etc. What you see in your packet is a bunch of conditions that are requiring us to do everything in regards to ensuring that a fire doesn't happen, and other safety considerations, other environmental concerns. That's why you have, and you paid Berkeley Group, I don't know where they went, to help draw up all these things. We're following all that, we're going to accept all that, all right? It's not in our interest to have a fire either. If there's a fire, we lose a lot of money, we pay a lot of insurance, we have all kinds of issues, and we also lose our social license to basically develop projects, not only here in Pennsylvania County, but other places. So, again, I want to acknowledge, I think the neighbors' concerns are very legit. I'm very sorry that they did not, again, get the information from us before. We reached out to a lot of them. I think sometimes it goes to whoever's on the property tax roll. Again, that's the address we send it to, and not always the person who's living there. But we really, again, take this seriously, the fire safety concerns. That's why, we met with your fire department more than once, and you're not seeing them, again, the fire department, the fire marshal's office, have any concern in your packet. Thank you.
I have a question.
I have a question
too. When you met with the fire department, was it discussed in case of a fire? Did they feel like they had the capacity and the equipment to put it out if that so happened?
My understanding with what we discussed with them is they would be able to manage the situation to ensure this health and safety of their fire department and emergency responders and any neighbors with the considerations that we discussed about in here. So,
And the second question I have, so many people didn't get the letter. Were they sent certified? Do you know that? The
Sorry,
letters?
say
Were
that
they
again?
mailed out certified?
the batteries are certified in some way in the design? Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Again, we don't buy your random battery that goes into your scooter hoverboard or whatever, right? It is a very specific battery that has to be basically checked, and there's what's called a UL code, and specific in your conditions, I think, actually, there's a specific code in here that we will have to follow.
Excuse me, sir. I think she asked, were the letters certified that were sent, mailed
That's
out
what I
to
was
the...
getting ready to
Were
correct.
the letters certified is what she's asking, that was mailed out to the residents?
Was the mail certified? No, miss, excuse me, I'm sorry. I misheard you, I'm a little hard of hearing.
I was waiting till you finished.
I can tell you, though, that, again, people received it because, again, a neighbor, Jerry Barker, called Mr. Scruggs, and I went and knocked on doors with a number of those neighbors also on Spring Street, and they said that they had received it.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, some might not have,
That's
but
okay.
I do know a number of them did, if that makes sense.
Mr. Waters?
Yes, sir. Under condition number 8, which is safety operation standards, the first bullet says each individual battery shall have 24/7 automated fire detection and extinguishing technology built in. Is that true with
Yes,
your
sir.
batteries?
I think I talked about this in my original part. We talked about a suppression system, and that is, again, what basically is either a foam or a gas. Again, it depends on the specific type of battery, but the manufacturer has that additional level of basically like a fire extinguisher, basically.
So can these toxic plumes of smoke or gases actually escape the building or no?
They do vent out, sir, because what we don't want happening is an explosion and then potentially those building up if that suppression system fails and then having an explosion. That was the one time that firefighters have been injured was back in 2019 when the enclosures were designed not to have a venting system. And basically they opened a door which led into oxygen and there was an explosion and they got back. And so the industry learned from that, sir. And basically now if a fire does happen basically or some kind of off-gassing starts to happen, part of the response is to open that up. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that's dangerous, okay? You'll see, and if you read up on all the responses, even the one back in May, it was not releasing this gases that hurt human health. And there's monitoring from the EPA and other government officials, even all the responses up in New York, they will see that there's no contamination that happened in the ground or basically human health impacts from the air. The equivalent, not that we like this, is basically a house fire. And that's what's happening when kind of the type of smoke and fumes coming out of this basically is the equivalent of basically a house fire or someone having a burn pile to a certain extent and burning trash.
Has any of your battery facilities experienced?
None of East Point, sir, no. None of the ones that we have permitted, developed, or designed.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Yes, Mr. Rowe.
Are y'all willing to pay the expense of buying the equipment and supplies that fire departments need to fight a fire if one was to accidentally pop up?
Yes, sir. So again, on the siding agreement that we negotiated with the county, there is money built into that to pay for any equipment that the fire department might decide. Now, I don't decide that. They decide what they want. We're responsible also, though, for creating and with them an emergency response plan and training them on it before it goes operational. So before the system can turn on, those volunteer firefighters, and along with the county, get trained up and will do some kind of simulation, et cetera, with the necessary equipment that they would recently have purchased with the funds that we provided them. Now, if there's a fire response, sir, we have liability insurance, et cetera, and would cover that cost. There's decommissioning plans that are also mentioned in here. So if one happened to catch on fire, we're responsible for basically cleaning that up, taking that off the site and switching it. We do not take the batteries and just bury it there or anything like that. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Would any other commissioners have a question?
So the way in which you're gonna supply the type of chemical that needs to go for the fire department is through the initial payment of what's gotta go? Because I'm looking at it, says that the initial payment to the county would go into an escrow account before you ever start a construction. Is that the funding that's supposed to pay for the fire department?
So,
Am I-
yes.
I'm misinterpreting.
Yeah, there's, how it was negotiated, there's different milestone payments based on how far we advance and as we go. So those milestone payments in the agreement with the county negotiated with us is for potentially a number of different things, including to pay for the planning department to have third parties study it, make sure we're designing it correctly because it might be out of their expertise, in addition to pay for equipment, again, that the fire department might need. And there is, not all 900,000, sorry, is at that time of operation. Again, it's staggered with, I think, $200,000 left at the end, once operational.
What's the point in a water tank if water don't put it out?
Sorry, can you say that again?
We were talking earlier about having a water storage facility on site. Is that to put out something outside of the building structure? Because if water don't put this out, I don't understand the point in having a water tank storage.
Yeah, correct. So the water storage, there's no one like, there's no toilets, there's no one then occupying it that would be human usage. This would just be only for basically fire response if needed. And basically in that NFPA 855, that National Fire Protection Guidance, they have specific formulas that, along with, they look at the type of enclosures we're doing, the design, et cetera, and all the potential houses, trees, et cetera, surrounding the place. And then they tell us basically how much water you should have for worst case scenario situations. And that's usually then assuming that, let's say, 2 or 3 of them go up. So they're planning for worst case scenario, sir, and that is, again, not to basically flood the batteries, but is to provide enough water in case it goes 5 days to be able to basically protect all the surrounding structures or neighbors or vegetation to ensure a fire doesn't propagate further.
Maybe. I don't get it.
Is there any more discussion or questions?
Madam Chair, I have a comment for this gentleman. Sitting here listening at all the concerns that our citizens have, I would strongly recommend that we push this thing out about 30 days, and you go back and have some good outreach to these citizens and get their feel. They're not educated enough of what's going on, and I think we owe that to them. I know some of them didn't get letters. You said they were sent out, but there's a lot of questions here tonight hasn't been answered, and they're not satisfied.
I would say I'm more than happy to do that, sir. If
Okay,
that's
that's just what I'm recommending, that we reach out. We can push it out 30 days and not have to re-advertise, or whatever we need to do.
You could postpone this until the next meeting, and we'd still probably re-advertise it, wouldn't we, Emily?
Yes.
What we would do, we would allow them, they could just postpone it and we'll re-advertise it again. I think it's a good idea because there appears to be a subdivision that
It's a lot of unanswered questions. I think we owe it to them. That's my recommendation.
I
All right,
agree.
thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
I'd be more than happy to do that if that was what you'd like me to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need to make a motion and vote on that?
Yes, so you would, that would be your motion. That would be to postpone it to next month's meeting.
I can't vote, so somebody else has to.
That's
make the motion.
correct.
That's
So
my
whoever
recommendation.
makes the motion, if that's what
Yeah.
you would like to do, you would need to make a motion to postpone it to next month's meeting.
Mr. Chairwoman, I'll make a motion that we postpone it until the next meeting.
And the requirement would be that they conduct some form of community outreach to that subdivision that appears some people don't know what's going on.
Yes, with the condition that they do some additional outreach.
Okay, absolutely. Do there need to be any type of amendments to the motion or some type of requirement that we know that the public has been satisfied, like some type of metric we need to meet or they need to satisfy?
I don't think so. I think that they can just, if I was them, I would be sending certified letters or knocking doors and making sure you took attendance and they could empirically prove to you that they talked to most of these people.
Great, thank you. So.
I just want to bring out too, Mr. Hawker was not here, and that is his district. And perhaps he will be here another month, that he can put some input into it as well. And for everybody to know, the preliminary hearing comes through us first, but at the end of the day, the Board of Supervisors has the final decision.
Board of Zoning Appeals.
I
'cause
mean
this is a
zoning,
special
excuse me,
permit.
yes.
All right, so a motion has been set on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. There's been properly seconded. We're ready for a vote. All right, that motion is passed, 6 and 1 absent. Right, we have our next and last case, Ms. Emily.
Case S-24-018, Anchorstone Advisors, SOVA LLC, has petitioned for a special use permit on a total of 945.79 acres located on and off of U.S. Highway 58 and State Road 735 Cedar Road in the Dane River Election District to allow for a data center on the property, in accordance with Pennsylvania County Code, Section 35-403. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, I believe Tom Gallagher is here to represent the petition.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission, staff, public in attendance, and those viewing remotely. My name is Tom Gallagher. I'm here on behalf of the petitioner, Anchorstone Advisors, SOVA, for a special use permit for a data center on the subject site. This property was rezoned, and during that rezone, we held a number of community meetings, outreach meetings, where we've met a number of people, including some of the folks, some others that you'll hear from tonight. And we spent a lot of time taking that input, looking at the different factors. We've come up with, there we go, sorry. I got it upside down again, Kevin. So the site is, as referenced, about 946 acres with access off of 58. The objective, our unilateral objective, has been to bring Pennsylvania County its first data center. As part of the rezoning, in fact, we rezoned to M2, but as part and parcel of that, we really did it with a focus on data centers. So a lot of the things that were included, all the proffers that we agreed to as part of the rezoning, many of them address concerns that were raised in the data center concept, if that makes sense. So what are data centers? You've heard about them. You're going to continue to hear about them. They modern digital library. They hold a lot of information. You think about all the computers everybody uses, large-scale data for business, military, and government. Safe and reliable use. Everybody uses them. And from a capacity standpoint, when you think about things going to the cloud, they're not actually going up to the cloud, they're going to a data center somewhere. They've just continued to expand, and they are the lifeblood, and information and technology is the future for us. So these are critical to economic development, not only, in the county, especially right now. What do they look like inside? They're pretty bland. They look like a big server room. So if you've been in an office somewhere and you walk by the server room and you see racks of servers, this is acres of racks of servers. On the exterior, they're basically warehouses. They are nondescript for the most part. We're certainly secluded in a lot of the ones that they're all successful, but are secluded. So, and next thing I'll hit on is noise levels. One of the things that came up and concerns voiced with respect to noise. And you can see on the scale there, so moderate conversation is right at 60. The limits that we've agreed to and actually that are part of for data centers is 65 decibels at the property line. So, and which is tested and has to be met, and if not, it could be shut down from an operations standpoint. The other thing that we heard about and people expressed concerns about was light impacts, and we will definitely be adhering to dark sky principles. Frankly, everybody's moving in this direction. It not only makes sense because it limits light pollution, but economically, it's more efficient. It costs less to actually follow the principles. You've heard a lot about data centers because there's a lot of benefits from data centers. Not only are they necessary for modern society, but the tax revenues from data centers are very attractive because there's very low impact on the county provided services. We can talk about fire and rescue in a moment, but there's no schools. From a transportation standpoint, this site at 946 acres, if we built out the entire thing, which would not be the 946 acres because not all of it's developable, as you can see on one of the plans, but from a transportation standpoint, we're estimating at full belt, 100 to 500 employees per day, which is very minimal. VDOT's threshold for a traffic study is 5,000 vehicles per day, I believe is accurate. So from a transportation standpoint, there's limited impact. Additionally, no school kids, et cetera. The bonus for the county and for the jurisdictions and why they are all building data centers is because the taxes, they pay real estate taxes, they pay energy, and off the energy tax, there's money comes from it. And then the millions and sometimes billions of dollars of equipment that is in the warehouse, in the data center, is taxed at a special rate, which accrues a very substantial benefit to the county. Talked about the 946 acres where we've got great connectivity. We've got accessibility to water, sewer, the fiber network, robust fiber network right on 58, power available. We've got major transmission lines that transect the property. We've agreed to, and we are on a 75-foot buffer with a 30-foot screening area, as well as maintaining enhanced buffers around Tom Fork and Cane Creek. So there are two streams that are located within the property. And I'm not sure exactly how much we expanded by, but we increased the buffers around those two. We still need the ability to cross them, but in terms of the impacts, we're stepping back 150 feet, I think, from the floodway.
On each side.
On each side, on each side. From a location standpoint, obviously you've got the Airside Industrial Park, Cane Creek Center, the airport, and the landfill, which are in close proximity so from a impact standpoint, this data center from a noise, transportation, light, I think in every category will be less intensive and less noticeable than any of those. They really are low impact to the point where the environmental, the stormwater management, we'll go through all that. We have to meet all the standards. At the end of the day, they are over-engineered because you don't get the amount of truck traffic and other traffic that you might if it's a warehouse facility or a manufacturing facility. It's just limited traffic. We talked about the location, access to all the required utilities. It is zoned M2. As an additional part of the proffers, we proffered out well, number one, you can see data center. We maintain the ability to do some other less intensive uses, warehouse, distribution, laboratory, research and development, light manufacturing, telecommunications. Use is not allowed because we heard loud and clear on the front end was we pulled out raceway, junkyard, salvage yard, landfill, or residential dwellings. Traffic impact study is not required, although if in the future the use would change or there would be additional traffic that would require one, we certainly would be obligated to do that. We talked about on the life safety and fire, the initial feedback was like the fire folks don't know data centers, so we've proffered to, prior to the first building permit, to start like meeting with them and coordinating directly with them on access, and then on an annual basis, doing the same thing, just so that they're prepared. We talked about buffers and screen, access to public water and sewer, and then we also obviously agreed to, to the greatest extent possible, use local labor and trades. Traffic planning, this is probably the one, from a traffic standpoint, the biggest impact from this will be during construction, okay? Because if you're talking about the ultimate build-out where you get 100 to 500 vehicles a day, it's during construction, which could be from 18 to 24 months, or it could be in a couple different phases, depending. And we've had preliminary meetings with Ms. Ragsdale and Mr. Craddock from VDOT. I don't see, there'll be a robust maintenance of traffic plan, which is basically VDOT saying, all right, if you want access to this site to commence construction, this is what you're going to have to do. Which will include a lot of both automated and human involvement in terms of flagmen and hazard lights and things of that nature. So I think we're comfortable that in working with VDOT, and there's certainly sufficient right-of-way and area to work out in that section of 58 in terms of design and traffic. This is a conceptual layout. I will tell you that we've laid out various buildings where we don't have the level of detail on some of the, I'll use this over here. Oh, it doesn't work on there. Okay, but this is conceptual location, talking about, there would be primary access off of 58, like both for construction and permanent operations. I would expect, we've talked to the county about this, that there would be one or two other secondary entrances for life safety purposes, which would be likely, but from a ingress and egress primarily off of 58. These privately laid out, this is the power lines, this is a conceptual substation. There are, and I will, but in here I'm not sure exact area, there are 3 small parcels, 2 really small ones and one about 1 acre, that are located within the interior of this property. And the one of consequence is there is a cemetery located on the property. We will be coordinating with, the woman who is on the title, I think Mrs. Webb, and then all of the other stakeholders. It's my understanding in terms of the cemetery that by state law, we cannot prevent decedents from visiting their loved ones at their resting place. So we'll be working out. And right now it's overgrown, it's accessible, but it's not easily accessible. So we would foresee that whatever would be done to provide for the access would be certainly much better than it is today. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any commissioners have any questions for the gentleman?
With the approvals, what's the timeline you think?
Well, once we have, if we receive your recommendation this evening, then we'll go before the BZA.
Correct.
Right, and then after that, the biggest thing for us is we're working with the power companies, because it's power and it's coordinating power, and it's a whole, and everything that's going on power right now. So that's the only caveat, but I mean, time is of the essence and speed to market is critical. Yep. So we would like to get under construction sooner rather than later, but we can't move forward with that until we get some level of comfort on the power, near term and then longer term, because obviously, one of the prior applicants mentioned, with the batteries, there's different solutions. I think there's going to be a patchwork of solutions short term, and then longer term, I think there's going to be some real innovation, whether that's nuclear fission or other things that put us all in a better place.
What is your comfort level with the power? You mentioned comfort level just now. What is it?
It's not as high as I would like it to be, but power's a challenge right now. We're behind Europe in terms of our infrastructure, grid, network, right? But we're catching up. And obviously the federal government knew that. And part of the bills that were passed to bring manufacturing back here, to bring back the jobs, so this is Pennsylvania County and Danville are like ground zero, right? With all that money, and I know JPM just got a $57 million grant to expand the transmissions and upgrade it in Carolina. So I think the money's out there. I think the will is out there. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But I said this to a couple people. It would be unfathomable to me that Pennsylvania counties and Danville's economic revitalization would be hindered by inability to get power, because the infrastructure here, the bones are strong in this area, right? So the power part of it, I do think it's solved. Sorry, long-winded answer, but.
That's good.
All right. Okay, if we have no more questions, then we'll close that portion, open for the.
So we do have some people sign up to speak. The first one is Virginia Webb. Okay. James Scruggs. Okay. Ann Smith.
Good evening, all of you guys. I know you're probably tired by now. My name is Ann Smith, and I own.
Miss Smith, will you pull that microphone? There you go.
Is that better? Okay. This is my third time speaking against this issue, and I still am strongly opposed to this facility going in. As I have said before, there are plenty of places it could be put instead of in the middle of a neighborhood to disrupt everyday life of citizens and taxpayers who have lived there for many years, myself for 45 years. Now, he spoke about the lighting and the noise. I have been to the site in Boynton, Virginia. That building is over 1 million square feet, and that's just one building. And there will be 5 that they want to build on this 945 acres, I'm told. The one in Boynton lights up the sky at night like Las Vegas or New York City. This low light that he's talking about is not happening. It's going to be right in my backyard. I oppose it strongly. The noise is a constant buzz, and you can hear it 2 miles away. Is that low? No, it's not. I'm not sure why this was approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, except for the taxes that Anchor Stone keeps stating it will bring to the county over a period of 30 years. My understanding, these data centers become obsolete in 8 to 10 years due to the new technology that will occur. This facility would undoubtedly decrease property values, increase the traffic where school buses run daily. At this time, they state they're going to come off of 58 East as an entrance and use Cedar Road as a backup or an emergency. I doubt that will be the case, and we'll see what happens when that takes place. I don't think or believe that any of you sitting here tonight would want this catastrophic nightmare in your neighborhood where you have lived and tried to plan your future for your family. We should not even have to be here tonight and begging you to say no to these special permits. The landfill is enough to tolerate. It smells every single day. And when it rains, it's so bad you can't hardly take it. And we've been tolerating that for years. In conclusion, I'm asking you one more time, as a representative from my community, please do not allow these permits to be issued. Think about the quality of life for people living in the area and the effect it will have, not just the dollar signs that you think it's going to bring. Please put the data center somewhere else in Pennsylvania County. It's the largest county in the state of Virginia. There's plenty of places. Please say no to these permits and stop this from happening now. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Linda Brooks.
Galvin. I've lived in the Mountain Hill community in the Dan River District of Pennsylvania County since 1973. I have attended the county meetings in regards to the data center and also the two meetings at the Ringgold Fire Department with the Anchorstone advisors, the LLC advisors, Mr. Tony Saylor and Mr. Tom Gallagher. They arranged these meetings with the community to answer questions and for the residents to voice their concerns about the data center. There was a big crowd at the first meeting at the fire department, and I heard someone vaguely mention cemeteries, but I did not hear the answer that they gave because there was so much talking going on around me. I have known about at least 5 cemeteries on the Cedar Road in Mountain Hill for a long time. After the first meeting at the Ringgold Fire Department, just out of curiosity, I asked my son Randy if he knew if there was any cemeteries on the property that they're proposing to do the data center. He knows about the property because when it was used as deer hunting preserve, it was called the 700 acres, and he hunted on it for many, many years. He said, yes, it is a big cemetery behind a block building in the middle of the property. When I went to the second meeting at the Ringgold Fire Department that Anchorstone had arranged with the community, I was really disappointed and was really criticized badly by my friends and some of the residents. Why was I upset about that? It's because I was the only person from the community that showed up for the meeting. Mr. Height, our Dan River Board of Supervisors, he was there, and a girl by the name of Grace Mamon is the Cardinal News reporter. So it was a whopping 3 of us that showed up for that meeting. I did ask several questions that night, but the main thing I wanted to know was about the cemeteries. I asked Mr. Gallagher, the advisor, about the cemeteries down Cedar Road, and he said, oh, those are on the Cheney's property. I asked him about the big cemetery my son had told me about in the middle of the property where the data center is going to go. His answer to me was, oh, we've got permission to move it. Are cemeteries, this is my question, are cemeteries not regulated as part of a special use permit? Thank y'all.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board or any?
James Corpening.
I'd like to know on the farm adjoining these data center going to be located, and then I like keep everything agricultural. I'm saying the data center should come in this area in Mountain Hill anyway. All the industrial sites you got in Pittsburgh County look like it would locate like Berry Hill. It just said about Island. But nothing going up. They could easily go there. And you got other building sites over the whole county, Governor Hut, Gretna, Chatham, everywhere. I don't understand why they won't come, our area to build. I don't understand that. Why they want to build in our area to start with. If you understand what I'm saying. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all that was signed up to speak.
Okay, at 8:54, that closes the public
Did he want-
hearing portion.
Did
Would
he
you
want
like
to
to?
rebut anyway?
Yes, would you like to approach?
Mr. Gallagher, you want to come back up?
What's up?
Once again, thank you for the opportunity to appear. With respect to some of Mrs. Smith's comments, clearly, local residents are always the ones most impacted by land use decisions. People that are in it, it's just the case that they're, and we understand that. At the end of the day, what I would say, and I've said this before, is from a use standpoint, what we're talking about from an impact, from a transportation, traffic, will be less. It would be less than residential, it would be less than manufacturing, it will be significantly less. With respect to the lighting, I understand that, but I can't speak to what lighting fixtures or what they did in Boynton, but I will tell you, there are specific designs. I think even in the ordinance now they've got references like the deflection and things like that. You can control it. I mean, some facilities are big and they have a lot of lights, but dark sky principles do work, and they are actually cost effective. And I understand that with the landfill, and we're not a landfill and nowhere near it. The other question that came up is why here? And I just want to reiterate that because of the access to utilities, you've got a lot of investments that has been made privately and publicly, whether it's on transportation, fiber, power, water. So it is a great location for that in terms of access to utilities. And we did have a number of community meetings. I think there may have been a miscommunication with respect to the cemetery, because if I said anything about moving, it was that I've never moved a cemetery. I have heard of cemeteries being moved for developments. That was, okay, well, I apologize, I misspoke. We do not have permission to move it, and I don't know that anybody really wants to move a cemetery, because I've talked to some folks that have done it, and it is highly regulated, and ultimately you need to get an order from, I think, the circuit court, and you have to work with all the stakeholders in order to get there. So, in terms of the noise, the thing I will tell you, and I'm happy to schedule a time to make a trip down to Boynton, but we also went down there and and at the property line, we got a reading of 40 decibels with a decibel meter reader. And then finally, I think I heard a comment with respect to Berry Hill, and the one thing I will tell you about Berry Hill in the county, and everybody's been very disciplined for the most part. The battery thing's a little bit off, but in terms of jobs, this will create some high-paying jobs, but it's not going to create the thousands of jobs that the mega site's going to create. This is not competition nor intended, and that's another reason why it's better here, because we're looking for, everybody's waiting for the mega site, and it's going to benefit everybody. I think that was it. I'm happy to answer other questions you may have at this time.
Would any members of the board like to address the gentleman?
I would just like to say that the bad thing about development is it's always going to be in somebody's neighborhood. I don't care where you put it. It's going to be in a neighborhood or close to it. And these gentlemen have really done their homework to find the best location in this county to put this. It's as far as utilities, water, electricity, transportation, it's all there. And I want to thank y'all for really getting in and doing your homework on this job and coming to Pennsylvania County.
Madam Chairman, I just want to say too, reiterate what Mr. Oakes just said. It does affect the community, but anytime you build, you're going to have for and against. I do think the first meeting that I attended, there was so much opposition, so many people there. As you can see, we've come a long ways. There's 4, 5 tonight. So somebody has done the homework of convincing the community, maybe educating them what this facility is all about. You have done your homework for sure. You've contacted all the leaders in the county, not only the county, but the city. You've included everybody. You've considered everything that you could think of to make a solution and make this happen. I want everybody, all the citizens of Pittsylvania County, to realize what an impact economically this is to our county. I commend you for your hard, tireless work, a lot of long meetings for the past few months. I wish you the best, and I hope the county will be anchored to your company. Thank you so much for what you've done for us.
Thank you. And I would add that we're certainly willing to continue conversations. So we're available. But thank you very much.
All right, at 9:01, the public hearing is now closed. And
Madam Chairman, we got to make a motion. Madam Chairman, I want to make a motion in case S-24-018. I want to make a motion to approve for the special use permit on to the BZA.
motion's on.
Is that
Is there a
as
second?
submitted or with the conditions by staff?
Would you like to add?
No, I don't want to, with the conditions by staff.
Right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Right. It's been motioned and seconded. Ready for a vote?
Mr. Oaks.
Yes.
All right, and the motion passes 6 in the affirmative with 1 absent. All right, is there any old business?
There is no old business.
All right, is there any new business?
New business, we have a conservation easement that is asking for your determination of whether or not it's substantially in accordance with the county's comprehensive plan. It's being requested by George and Ellen Wynn. It's a conservation easement on 159.90 acres located on State Road 865 Telegraph Road in the Bannister Election District. This property is the future land use of this property is designated as agricultural and rural residential in the comprehensive plan, which the comprehensive plan does require that designation for it for conservation easements. And all that is included in your packet.
All right. Will we need to handle that tonight?
You will need to make a motion as to whether or not you think it is substantially in accordance with the comprehensive plan or not, and then you will need a vote.
All right. Well, that's my district, so I'll make a motion. Not 100% sure what to say in that motion.
So if you think it is in accordance with the comprehensive plan, you can make a motion to approve the comprehensive plan, stating that it is in accordance. If the conservation easement, I'm sorry, is in accordance with the comprehensive plan.
All right. I'd like to make a motion that the details in that conservation easement be approved or submitted to the Board of Supervisors as presented,
It'll just be that it's in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So
in accordance with the comprehensive plan. Is there-
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, we're ready for a vote.
Mr. Oaks? Yes.
Okay, that has passed. 6 in the affirmative and 1 absent. All right, that concludes our meeting.
Slamming time.